What is going on YouTube? Joe here with Color Nation Media, and we're here today to talk about the recent banning of Mega-Mawile from Smogon's OU metagame. We're going to be talking about this, discussing it, analyzing how maybe it will go over as far as, how this affects the metagame, how this will affect play styles, things of that nature. I did do a video on this a couple of weeks ago when it was originally being suspect tested, and I did say, I just came out and said I am not in favor of it being banned. I still feel that way, but I also have come to a little bit more of an understanding on where the other side was coming from, and that's what we're just kind of here to discuss today. We are going to be keeping this positive, so even though I encourage you guys to always leave a comment and let me know what you think, if you have something really negative to say and you just want to talk about how Smogon's stupid and all they do is ban stuff and they're losers and I don't like Smogon and blah blah blah, which is what I've been getting on a lot of these videos, you will be banned from the channel if you do that. Just want to throw that out there. I'm generally a very nice guy, but I'm not going to put up with that. We can be constructive and act like mature adults and discuss this in a constructive way. There's no reason to not do that. There's no opinion that's fact. Just because you feel very strongly about something doesn't mean that that's the right way or that's the only way or anything like that, which is why I try to not, when I do these videos, I'm not trying to I'm just trying to give you my side of things. I'm not trying to say my opinion or the way I think of things is the way to do it. It's not right. It's just my opinion. If you agree with that, that's fine. If you don't agree with that, that's also fine. I'm not trying to ram my opinion down anyone's throats or anything like that and expect you guys to do the same. So, kind of sad that I had to say that, but some people just take things a little bit too far, if you know what I mean. Most of you guys are fine, though. Let's start taking a look at this. So it got banned on Friday. And depending on when this video goes up, it's either later Saturday or Sunday. So it's been at least a day. And on Friday, the last I checked in the thread that I linked in the video I first did about this, or not that wasn't the voting thread. That was the suspect thread. Never mind. It was a different thread. The voting thread. 80% of people were voting to ban this thing, so that's a pretty overwhelming majority. I don't know if the voting finalized as around 80% or if it changed depending on the last couple of people that had to vote, but regardless, even if it dropped a few points, that is an overwhelming majority, so they must have some kind of point, because if you're getting that high up on the ladder to be able to vote, you must know what you're doing at least a little bit. There are a couple points that I really disagree with, given as one of the main reasons to get rid of Mawile, but there are other things that I do agree with and I do see the point of, so we're going to break those down. I'm also going to clarify some of my opinions that I mentioned in the last video because people were not really understanding what I was saying, taking things out of context, that kind of thing. So first things first, Mawile has a fantastic typing. So that right off the bat gives it a huge advantage. Then you add on the fact that its regular form has Intimidate, so it can create a nice opportunity for it to set up, because most Mega-Mawile sets are set up in some way. The two most common sets that you see run are the Swords Dance set and then Sub Focus Punch, and Sub Focus Punch is really just there to take on some of its usual counters such as Heatran, etc. It really just poops on a lot of steel types. But either way, Mawile usually requires some kind of turn of setup. But the Intimidate, and there's a lot of physical attackers in OU, so Intimidate really does help it out on forcing a switch. The one point I do want to bring up is that because of the two common sets that it likes to run, there is pretty much no switch-ins. You really don't have a safe switch-in, sadly. It's got Iron Head, it's got Play Rough, and the huge power gives it a ridiculous amount of power. And there's one thing to have a Pokemon be a wall breaker, which is fine. Every tier has those things. But this thing hits ridiculously hard because of that huge power. It's insane. And then you add the fact that it's got so much, losing my train of thought here. It's got such a great typing is what I was trying to say, not that it has so much power and so much power. That doesn't make sense. Yeah. So there's that. Now, the main argument that I've seen against banning Mega-Mawile also doesn't really apply, because most people just say, oh, anything that's faster and can burn it, then Mega-Mawile is done, because it only has 50 base speed and blah, blah, blah. okay, but if you don't have the Pokemon that can be faster and burn Mega-Mawile when it's out, or if you don't have that Pokemon out on the field when Mega-Mawile comes out, it can just set up a sub as you switch, and then you're not burning it. Then you have to either let it set up something, set up an SD. Typically, sub SD is not a set that's run together, but you have to take an attack, and a lot of times Play Rough is just gonna kill you. If you're a fire type and you've got the Willow, like Arcanine, Arcanine's really the only thing that you can make a case for, and I talked about that in my last video. Arcanine, physically defensive Arcanine, does a fairly decent job of countering Mawile, because you can intimidate it, you're faster, you can burn it, you can break subs, you resist both of its stabs. Charizard X does an okay job, but it doesn't resist the Play Rough, so Play Rough is definitely a 2-hit KO, so you can't switch in on it. Arcanine can a little bit better because of said Intimidate and because you have the resistance to both stabs, and Sucker Punch is going to be doing that much. You can always run Rocky Helmet if you want. You have the recovery in the Morning Sun, so it's a nice big thing, but unfortunately, Arcanine is not the best in OU. There are some better options, but the way I see it is, if Mega-Mawile is a big threat, then you have to prepare for a big threat. Every tier has big threats. Every tier has Pokemon that you go, when you're making a team, you go, okay, this is a huge threat. I need to bring something that can handle this. Just because it's a big threat does not mean it needs to be banned. But at the same time, I also understand that outside of Arcanine, and if you don't know what set it's running, you really don't have a safe switch in. And most of the time, whatever switches in is just going to get killed. Most of the time, in fact, regardless of what you do, Mega-Mawile is going to get at least 1, usually 2 kills before it goes down. It's absolutely ridiculous. And the fact that it relies on the unreliable priority of Sucker Punch does help a little bit in dealing with it. But like I said, it's not as simple as just bringing in a faster Pokemon and Will-O-Wisping it. That does not always work, especially if it's running a substitute set. That's just not going to work. It's going to sub, and when you try to Willow it, it's obviously not going to work. You have to do something else to try to break the sub, and meanwhile, it's just going to kill you. So, yeah. Now, I will say that the players on the top of the OU ladder, and OU players in general, tend to be very stubborn. They don't like relying on predictions. They will try to remove things and try to suspect things that cause prediction games. You're talking about Aegislash. Aegislash, actually, in retrospect, probably deserved to be banned because of how versatile it was. It did so many different things, more than just the 50-50 situation. But OU players are kind of stubborn when it comes to that. They don't want to use anything that's not top of the line OU. So Arcanine, they will tell you that it's uncompetitive, or they'll tell you that it's not viable in OU, blah, blah, blah. That's just the same old OU shenanigans. To be fair, Arcanine doesn't fare the best in OU, mainly because of its weakness to rocks. That's really what holds it back. But if Mawile was still in the tier, I would bring Arcanine. I would bring Arcanine just to counter this thing. Now, the fact that you have to bring Arcanine, maybe that's saying that it's a little bit broken. I don't really know. But yeah, so 80% majority decided to ban this thing. That's kind of crazy. And in my original video, I did say I don't think there's enough of a case for it to be banned. They make some really valid points in saying that, okay, you really don't have any switch-ins, and it has a set that's fairly common that takes care of its typical counters in the sub-punch set, which just absolutely destroys something that would normally be a great switch-in like Heatran. Fair enough. That's a fair point. I completely understand that. It's perfectly plausible to say that. What I don't like is that people say that, you know, their refusal to use Pokemon that are not top tier OU stuff like Arcanine. That can work. And who knows? It's not like tiers haven't shifted before. So having Arcanine go up to OU in usage, or just because of usage, based on being able to counter Mega-Mawile, that's kind of how the tiers work. certain Pokemon move up or move down based on what the threats are and what people are bringing to counter other stuff. That is kind of how the usage thing is supposed to work. It's supposed to create a balanced metagame. And while we're talking about a balanced metagame, I also want to talk about the very overused reason that people were citing in that thread, the suspect thread, about how Mega-Mawile threatens stall, which is just absolute and nonsensical reason to ban something. Because when was the last time you heard somebody say, oh, this Pokemon threatens offense, so we have to ban it? Nobody ever says that. Unfortunately, a lot of people at the top of the OU ladder will do anything to protect their beloved stall playstyle. And okay, I don't really like stall, but Smogon's OU metagame is supposed to be balanced. It's not supposed to be we just protect anything or we just do everything to protect stall. No, you need to do everything to protect all of the playstyles. So if something threatens offense, you need to look at that too. Why aren't we looking at Chansey? Okay, people are going to say, oh, Chansey has a lot of counters, it's so easy to play against, just send it a steel type, blah, blah, blah. But you get my point. It's always leaning towards stall. So the fact that Mega-Mawile just poops on stall, that's not really, that in itself is not a reason. That can be a supporting reason. Fair enough, because we do have to create a balanced metagame. But if you're just, for the reason to ban everything is not because it threatens stall, that we can't just keep getting rid of wall breakers, or stall is going to be the dominant playstyle, and that's not balanced. OU is the goal of OU, and banning things and limiting things is to make it balanced. If you get rid of the wall breakers and stall is the main thing, that's not balanced. I feel like people are way out of check, and it's not Smogon's fault. Smogon doesn't do this. It's the players that are getting up to the top of the ladder to vote on this stuff that have some kind of, I don't know, it's flawed logic to me. Now, in Mega-Mawile's case, Mega-Mawile might actually just poop on offensive playstyles even more than stall. Because stall, you know, you might have a Pokemon that can switch in depending on what Mega-Mawile is doing. Offensive teams will never have a switch in, or very, very rarely have any kind of switch in on Mega-Mawile. So they just, as soon as Mega-Mawile hits the field, something's going to die, basically. Or two things are going to die. You're going to have to sack quite a few Pokemon just to deal with it. So I'm not saying that Mega-Mawile doesn't threaten offense. I'm just saying I'm noticing a little bit of a pattern that is not healthy for what the supposed or alleged goal of Smogon's OU metagame is. That may just be me, but I've been competitive battling for a long time. And I've noticed over the last 5-6 years or so that it's just been like leaning more and more and more towards stall and protecting stall and making sure that playstyle can't be hindered in any way. That should not be the case, in my opinion, of course. That's my opinion. My opinion is that if you want to protect stall so much, then we need to not call it a balanced metagame, and we need to call it, you know, a stall-based metagame or a defensive metagame or something. But you can't say that you want it to be balanced and then all the top tier players, they're voting to protect stall all the time. I don't know. That's one thing. That's one pet peeve of mine that I have, or one observation that I've had. Granted, I didn't ladder up to vote on this. I thought about it, and I decided, you know what? I really don't play OU that much, so for me to ladder up just to vote no on this is just kind of silly, especially when such an overwhelming majority of people decided that Mawile doesn't belong. Now, to be fair, I want to add another little tidbit here for why maybe it should be banned. Let's take a look at the other side, because like I said, there's not just one side of it. Aegislash is gone, and Aegislash was something that could handle Mawile fairly well, because it's another Pokemon, one of the few, that resists the Steel Fairy stab, and then even if Mawile went for Sucker Punch, you're still going to get the attack drop on the King Shield, so that is the thing. Unfortunately, you couldn't Intoxicate, but you could wear it down a little bit, at least force it to switch out, maybe by reducing its attack, depending on what set it was running. If it was running, Sub Punch, those really couldn't touch Aegislash at all, other than maybe Sucker Punch if they had it. So with Aegislash gone, Mawile started to become a little bit overpowered, and kind of how these tiers work are when you remove such a huge threat or such an over-centralized Pokemon like Aegislash, what's going to happen is something else is going to take its place. Other things are going to start to rise in usage. That's just what it is. When Aegislash is running rampant, you remove that, other things are going to start to go up. I wouldn't be surprised to see Mega Heracross start to increase in usage, Gardevoir, Mega Gardevoir, Mega Medicham, Hawlucha, which actually has dropped down into UU just recently. We may see that go back up into OU. I'm not really sure. Well, I guess its usage was always UU because it was BL. So I guess that's a moot point, but we may see more of these Pokemon start to see use with Aegislash gone. Mawile just happened to be one of them. I don't know. Now, was the huge power factor too good for OU? Maybe it was, maybe it wasn't. I don't know. Like I said, I personally don't agree with it, but I understand completely where the other side is coming from on this one. They do make some very valid points that I think you would just have to not really understand how competitive battling works in order to disagree with, because they're just blatantly obvious that, you know, that's what Mega-Mawile does. It's just that good. For me, it just wasn't enough, because in previous generations we had stuff that was not necessarily that powerful, but stuff that was really over-centralized that stayed in the meta, and you know, other things just started to move up the ladder to counter them. That's just how it works, and that's, you know, what the natural fluctuation of the tiers is supposed to be. That's just my case. That's just how I see it. Like I said, other people may see it differently. I completely respect that. Anybody who had the Rex to vote, you know, you have my respect for being a good player. Obviously, you know what you're doing. And even though I didn't agree with you necessarily on this one, I'm sure I'll agree with you in a future time. So that's pretty much that. The last little piece of discussion that I wanted to get into, so I don't want this to be a crazy long video. I've already repeated myself a lot. I do this a lot in discussion videos. I just repeat the same points or linger on them a little bit too long, so I'm sorry about that. But the last thing I wanted to touch on was what we may see as a next suspect test, because I don't think they really have revealed that. Smogon did go on record as saying that they will be suspecting Charizard, the Megazards, obviously. I don't know if that's going to be next or not, but there are some cases for that. That would be another one that I would have to say I don't agree with if they do suspect the Zards. And at the same time, people get mad just at suspect tests being a thing. There's always been suspect tests on a whole bunch of things, and it's just a test to see how things work. You know, see if it's really over centralized, see if something is really too powerful. There's nothing wrong with testing out Pokemon. That's how you find out what really needs to be removed and what can stay. You got to test it. So suspect tests alone shouldn't be what you're mad about if you're upset that Smogon bans things left and right. If that's really what you're upset about, then you need to be worried about the actual bans, not the suspect tests. So that's something that I don't get. Like, why do so many people get angry or upset or frustrated just because of a suspect test? That doesn't make a lot of sense to me. But yeah, the Zards, they could be next. I don't know. I really don't know. I don't know what else would be next. I mean, I'm guessing it would be a Mega Pokemon in OU. A Mega Medicham, maybe, because of the huge power? Or not huge power, pure power. I don't know. Mega Heracross could be one because it's super bulky and hits like a truck. Another wall breaker Pokemon that Smogon's stall players may decide that they need to get rid of. Mega Gardevoir, maybe. These are things that are not overpowered to me. I don't think there's any reason to ban them, but I would not be opposed to a suspect test just to see. Maybe there's something that we're missing. Maybe, you know, you don't know how it's really affecting the meta until we test it. So I'm never against that. If you guys have any thoughts on what the next suspect test may be, maybe you have some inside information that I don't have, I don't know, or maybe you heard somebody talking about it, who knows? Leave that in the comment section below. I would love to discuss a little bit about what may be next. I would love to see some of the legendary Pokemon get suspected. I'm not like, legendaries, you can't lose legendaries. That's kind of a very uncompetitive way of looking at things. I'm not like that at all. I just think that maybe the genies, I really don't like the genies. I don't use them. I don't like going up against them. None of their forms. Don't like any of them. So, I don't know. Can we take a look at Landorus, maybe? It was suspected last gen, and I'm pretty sure it was a very close vote in just allowing it to stay in the meta. So that was something that didn't get banned. It got suspected and didn't get banned. That happened. Scald was another one last gen. It got suspected in 5th gen and left in the meta. I would not be opposed to seeing a knockoff suspect because, not because it's overpowered, but because it's over-centralized the meta. You can't go into any tier without seeing knockoff spammed on things that just are completely ridiculous. People just run knockoff just to have knockoff. I wouldn't be upset to see it nerfed to the point where there was a limit on how many Pokemon you can have that have knockoff. Not necessarily remove it completely, but that would be cool to see it like only used on one Pokemon or something, similar to the baton pass shenanigans. Oh, actually, there is something else I want to talk about. For those people that are upset with how fast these suspect tests have been rolling out, like Aegislash, it got banned, and then like a few days later they announced the next suspect test for Mega-Mawile. The reason they're doing that is because they spent so much time testing and testing and testing, and all of those shenanigans that went on with baton pass. That took like over a month just to get the whole baton pass thing figured out. It may have even been longer than that. I just completely lost track. They spent a lot of time looking at that, and then they got a couple of new OU council members that are now pushing to suspect things that should have been suspected a long time ago, but they got caught up with that baton pass thing. So that's why Mawile was tested so quickly after Aegislash. I know that's frustrating to some people, but these are things that needed to be suspected a long time ago. I agreed with the fact that they wanted to suspect test Aegislash, and I agreed with the fact that they wanted to suspect test Mawile. I didn't want them to get banned. I don't feel like they should have been banned, but the suspect test, I feel like we needed to test them. We needed to test these things. We needed to figure out what's going on with this meta. So that's pretty much all I wanted to say. I'm sure I missed things, and I'm sure I made some mistakes, which will be pointed out in the comment section below. But yeah, let's get some discussion going. Leave me your thoughts in the comment section. Tell me what you think of the ban. Tell me what you think maybe, you know, getting ready to be suspected next. Tell me if there's something you would like to see banned. You know, what suspects would you like to see, be it a specific Pokemon or a move? I offered the knockoff suggestion, maybe to take a look at limiting it or something. That would be cool. I don't know. So I'm just looking forward to reading your replies. I'm starting to lose my voice because I've been recording a lot of videos in a row. So I'm going to end this little discussion here. Hope you guys enjoyed it. If you did, make sure you're leaving a like rating and all that jazz. And I will see you next time. But until then, game on.